Hello, hello. Welcome back. This is Jumbo Commander with another Commander deck tech. Today, Karrthus, Tyrant of Jund. Let's take a look at this awesome Jund dragon. It's Karrthus, Tyrant of Jund, 4 black, red, green, for a legendary creature dragon, 7/7 flying haste. When Karrthus comes into play, gain control of all dragons, then untap all dragons. Other dragon creatures you control have haste. Man, this guy is just dragons, dragons, dragons. Steal all your opponent's dragons, give all your other dragons haste, and that's what this deck is. It's just about dragons and turning them sideways. Now, there's a few dragons that make you want to play this deck. The first one is gotta be a Tarka World Render. A 7 mana 6/4. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gains double strike until end of turn. Man, this flying, trampling beast can just give your whole team double strike and just go crazy. The next dragon that makes you want to play dragons is Utvara Hellkite. 6 red for a 6/6 flyer. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, put a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. You're dragon tribal. You're going to be attacking with dragons all the time, including dragon tokens. So you're just going to be popping out little dragons everywhere, just like bam, bam, dragon, 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 dragon. And that's exactly what you want to do. Just have all the dragons all over the place. The last card that makes you want to play dragons is Kolaghan the Storm's Fury. 5 mana for a 4/5 flying. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So every dragon gets this +1/+0 trigger. You go back to all those Utvara Hellkite dragons, and suddenly your dragons are huge. Man, this deck is all about making cool dragons and beating your opponent down with them. Such a fun deck. We are not done. There's some more awesome reasons to play Karrthus, and that's the Descent of the Dragon synergy. 4 red. Destroy any number of target creatures. For each creature destroyed this way, its controller puts a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Now, upgrading or downgrading every creature on the battlefield into a dragon actually sounds pretty bad, especially for 6 mana at sorcery speed. Wow, this is not a very good card, unless you can gain control of all the dragons next turn. Okay. It's not actually that good, even with the combo, but it's certainly spectacular. Everyone gets a dragon. Okay, just kidding. All those dragons are mine. Very fun. Also, in the same theme, we have Death by Dragons, 4 red. Each player, other than target player, puts a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. I'd like this card even if you can't steal those dragons back with Karrthus. I think it's cool and political. This game is all about shifting loyalties, teaming up against one person, and then backstabbing them later. Death by Dragons just facilitates that. It's just like everyone gets a dragon except for you because you're in the lead. You make friends, you make enemies, and then sometimes you just get a bunch of dragons the very next turn. Excellent card. Next we have Sarkhan the Mad, 3 black-red for a 7 loyalty planeswalker. Pretty good, and its plus ability is non-existent. It has no plus ability. Okay, well, 0. It's got a 0 ability. Reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Oh, draw a card. That's pretty sweet. Sarkhan the Mad deals damage to himself equal to that card's converted mana cost. You have a deck full of dragons. Sarkhan the Mad's 0 abilities, often 5 mana, draw a card. It's not good. Hopefully the -2 ability will save it. Target creature's controller sacrifices it, then puts a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. I like that. It gets around indestructibility. It just straight up kills a creature, and Sarkhan still has 5 loyalty left. Unfortunately, you gave them a 5/5 red dragon creature with flying, because that matches up very nicely. But you have Karrthus. So sometimes you can just steal that dragon back from them. I like that play. I'm going to kill your guy. You get a dragon. Just kidding. I get a dragon. Very fun synergies. But the reason why Sark the Mad is really in this deck is the -4. Each dragon creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target player. Now that is an ability that wins games. You can flood the board with dragons and then Sarkin someone to death. It's a very fun -4 sort of dragon-based ultimate, and it definitely earns Sarkin an inclusion. Now, there's a lot of dragons throughout Magic's history. And even though we've discussed a few of the dragons already, those are kind of the reasons to play the deck. You want that cool synergy going on, you want those fun plays. But these are the dragons that are really essential to making a dragon deck operate. Let's take a closer look at some important dragons for this archetype. Now, this deck is all about attacking. So cards that manipulate your combat phase are really powerful, like Hellkite Charger, 4 red for a 5/5 flying haste. And when it attacks, you can pay 5 red to get an extra combat step. That's very good. You can keep attacking with your dragons over and over again. And if we have Hellkite Charger, we're going to include Savage Ventmaw. Whenever this creature attacks, it adds red, green to your mana pool. This combos very nicely with Hellkite Charger, giving you basically infinite attack phases. Pretty cool. Also, Savage Ventmaw is just a great card. You have a very expensive mana cost deck. Your curve is awful. Your deck's full of dragons. So being able to ramp out a dragon your second main phase because of your Savage Ventmaw is very worthwhile. Speaking of extra combat steps, Scourge of the Throne. 4 red for a 5/5 flying dethrone. That means it gets a +1/+1 counter if you attack someone with the highest life total. And whenever you attack someone with the highest life total or shared for it, you get an extra combat step. Really good. It's another combat step, manipulating dragon, and also it facilitates you attacking. Sometimes it's really hard in commander games to be the person to do the first attack and to pick who you're going to attack. And I always hate rolling the dice to see who you attack. Scourge of the Throne kind of decides this for you, where it's like, well, I want the dethrone trigger, I want the extra combat step, swing. And this deck is all about attacking, so you should attack. Like I said before, this deck is very focused on attacking. So I'd like to introduce Dragonlord Kolaghan, 4 black-red for a 6/5 flying haste. Other creatures you control have haste. Now it has another ability that's really not relevant in EDH. Whenever an opponent casts a creature or planeswalker spell with the same name as a card in his or her graveyard, that player loses 10 life. It hoses Relentless Rats and Shadowborn Apostles. This is all about the haste. We want to be able to give our dragons haste, especially when we cheat them into play. A big swing without your opponents having a turn to prepare is very valuable. That's also why we run Karrthus. He also gives haste, but having the redundancy in the deck is very important. Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves also give your random large dragons haste. Now we have something that doesn't seem as good as it actually is. Let's take a look at Scourge of Valkas. 2 red, very prohibitive mana cost, for a 4/4 flying dragon. Let's look at the ability. Whenever Scourge of Valkas or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. So if Valkas comes in on an empty board, he'll do 1 damage to target creature or player. That's an underwhelming effect, but you'd be surprised at how many times this guy is what ends games. Being able to play your 5th or your 6th dragon can be incredibly powerful with Scourge on the battlefield. He can mow down creatures in the air or just deal damage to your opponent's face. Very powerful effect, which is why I also included Dragon Tempest. It does the same effect as Scourge. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield in your control, it gains haste until end of turn. That's a very powerful haste effect. We talked about that in the slide before. And then whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. You have 2 of these effects on the battlefield, and it's very powerful. Some players also like to play something similar, like Warstorm Surge, which is just way better than this Dragon Surge effect. Warstorm Surge is 6 mana. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Warstorm Surge is a powerful card. You might want to consider playing it if you're going to play a bunch of dragons. The next necessity that we have in Dragon Tribal is dragon-based removal. One of the best is Steel Hellkite, 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. He's got Fire Breathing for 2, and you can pay X to destroy each non-land permanent with a converted mana cost X, whose controller was dealt combat damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. Activate this ability only once each turn. This guy's great. You can hit someone and activate it for 1 and kill their Soul Ring, or 3 and kill their utility creature, or just activate it for 0, killing all their tokens. Steel Hellkite is a must for your Dragon Tribal deck. Next we have Balefire Dragon, 7 mana total, 5 and 2 red for a 6/6 flyer, and when it deals combat damage to a player, it just does 6 damage or more. I mean, he could be doing more damage, but most of the time 6 damage to each creature that player controls. This is great for taking out those token armies or those utility creatures as well. Next we have Deathbringer Regent, 5 in black for a 5/6 flyer, but when he enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand and there are 5 or more other creatures on the battlefield, destroy all other creatures. So this might get your utility creatures or your other dragons, but this is a dragon-based board wipe, an essential. Next we have a little bit more targeted removal with Dragon Lord Atarka. 5 and red-green for an 8/8 flying trample. That's a good rate. An 8/8 flying trample can definitely finish a game quickly. But he also has the other ability that says, when Dragon Lord Atarka enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers your opponents control. This guy coming down, sniping a planeswalker, or taking out a few creatures here and there can definitely swing a game. We also have the more classic Begarden Hellkite. It just costs 1 more mana total, and is a little bit weaker at a 5/5 flyer, but he has Flash, and it can have 5 damage divided among players as well. So a little bit more versatility in terms of when you play it and where it deals damage, and a little bit less power in the air. Overall, excellent cards. We have some more removal that's kind of dragon related. Ugin the Spirit Dragon. 8 mana for a 7 loyalty planeswalker, plus 2 to deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Minus X gets you your board wipe for everything that has a color. It's pretty selective. Sometimes you can subtract and kill everything that's small, leaving your 6 mana cost, 7 mana cost dragon still alive. It's pretty good. Your minus 10 is spectacular because you gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Guess what those permanents are going to be? They're going to be dragons. Ugin's also pretty great because you're already running a utility land called Haven of the Spirit Dragon, which can get him back. We also have Crux of Fate. This is a must include in any Dragon Tribal deck. It's 3 and 2 black for a sorcery that says, well, it basically says destroy all non-dragon creatures. I don't think you'll ever choose the first mode that says destroy all dragon creatures. It's a one-sided board wipe. You have tons of dragons. Yes, you have some non-dragons, but this is very awesome to just one-sided destroy the board, freeing up the skies for your dragon to rain terror on your opponents. Play the deck. So let's talk about dragons, on dragons. Dragons. Prosh, Sky Raider of Care, 6 mana 5/5 flyer. Now, Prosh is a pretty famous dragon. He has his own deck that's, well, very good, very oppressive. And, well, Prosh is just fine here. Not spectacular, but worth an inclusion. Dragon Broodmother, very hard mana cost, 2 red, green, but it's worth it. A 4/4 flying dragon at the beginning of each upkeep. Put a 1/1 red and green dragon creature token with flying and devour 2 into play. So a Wheel of the Table will net you a lot of dragons. Very cool card. Gets out of hand really quickly. Very fun. Broodmate Dragon is a classic. You get 2 dragons for the price of 1. Kakusho's just another good dragon. These are just the solid dragons that you could look up if you say, hey, I want to play with dragons. Kakusho drains your opponents. Again, very good in multiplayer. This can generate a huge life swing. Now, Stormbreath Dragon is the one dragon I think is a necessity in this list on this page. It's 3 red for a 4/4 flying haste protection from white. It's all about the monstrosity. Monstrosity 3 for 5 red. Well, a 7/7 is pretty good, but most importantly, when Stormbreath Dragon becomes monstrous, it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. That is the important ability. In my meta, there are people drawing cards all over the place. There are hands that are like full of Enter the Infinite combos and, people with sphinxes drawing off of each other. Stormbreath Dragon does the tiniest bit to just barely neutralize that out of control card draw. And when you pull it off, it's so much fun. Someone's holding their entire deck with a Reliquary Tower in play, and you're like, Stormbreath Dragon, Ultimate. Oh, it's so sweet. You need to be able to do that. Next, we have a little bit of answers to artifacts. Well, Hellkite Tyrant is the real answer to artifacts, which is 4 red for a 6/5 flying trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, just take all their artifacts. They're mine now. Your artifacts are mine. And, if you happen to have 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. I've yet to win the game with Hellkite Tyrant. I really want to. But I've definitely stolen a lot of people's artifacts, and it's great. Hoarding Dragon, very good card. You can go and search for an artifact in your deck, and you got a few. Most importantly, there's the dragon artifact. Steal Hellkite. So dragons on dragons. Very important. Horde Smelter Dragon, it's just targeted removal for artifacts, and what's really nice is you can get those big artifacts. 4 mana, destroy target artifact, and it gets plus X plus O, where X is the artifact's converted mana cost. Sometimes people like to play those gigantic artifacts, and Horde Smelter Dragon can get, plus 8 plus O until end of turn and smash in, while smashing your opponent's toys. Bladewing the Risen. 3 black, red for a 4/4 flying zombie dragon. Love it. But what he does is he can get a dragon from your graveyard onto the battlefield, and you can pump him. Pretty good for this recursion, making sure that you have some late game by getting back the dragons you lost previously. In the same line, we have Fearsome Awakening. 4 and a black to return a dragon card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gets 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Now, there are way better reanimation spells out there, but, these are just so cool. Zombie Dragon, you gotta play the Zombie Dragon. And Fearsome Awakening, it's inexpensive, it's flavorful, I like it. Next, we have some style dragons. First, Killmouth Dragon. 7 mana for a 5/5 Amplify 3. We're going to have to go to the rules text here to find out what Amplify is. Remember what it is. As this creature enters the battlefield, put 3 +1/+1 counters on it for each dragon card you reveal in your hand. This guy can get insane. Reveal 3 dragons. He's a 14/14. Just reveal 1 dragon. 1 dragon in your hand. 8/8 for 7. He's a good creature, and he's really fun. Also has a tap ability, and he'll deal damage equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on it to target creature or player. So minimum, if you amplified once, he's going to deal 3 damage on tap, or he could deal as much as 9 or 12 damage just by tapping. Very cool card, very fun to play with. Next we have a classic, Shivan Dragon. 4 red for a 5/5 flying fire-breathing dragon. This is then just for nostalgia, It's obviously not powerful. It's powerfully awesome. And killing people with a Shivan Dragon definitely earns you style points at any table. Next we have a Mana Charged Dragon. Another 6-drop, another 5/5 flyer, except for this time it has Trample and Join Forces. Let's take a closer look. Whenever a Mana Charged Dragon attacks or blocks, each player, starting with you, may pay any amount of mana. Mana Charged Dragon gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the total amount of mana paid this way. And this is just a fun card. I love attacking someone and then going around the table and seeing who wants to pile on. It's fun, it's political, it uses up your extra mana. It's certainly not the best card in the deck, but man, is it enjoyable to play. Last, we have the ultimate style points for Jund. Vakavictus? It's a Jund Dragon. It's a Jund Dragon. It has an upkeep. It's a 7/7 for 8. And you can pump it. It just has Fire Breathe. That's it. It has Fire Breathe. This is a bad card. But it's got a picture of an eel on the front. I'd play it. I'd play it. Next, we have some dragon support. There's a lot of dragons, but they need some help because you can't just have a mono 8-drop deck. Let's take a look at who's helping out these dragons. The first of our support comes in the area of mana reduction. We have Dragon Lord's Servant, which makes your dragons cost 1 generic less to cast. We have Dragon Speaker Shaman, which makes them cost 2 less to cast. Urza's Incubator, when you choose Dragon, those creatures cost 2 less to cast. Krosan Drover, which allows you to play big creatures for 2 less. And we have Duskwatch Recruiter, which is kind of do 2 things. You can get more dragons because this deck is chock full of creatures. And then when he flips over, he'll let you cast your dragons for 1 less. Now this mana reduction does impact the game a lot, but in all honesty, like a Birds of Paradise or another mana creature or a mana rock might be better. I think I like the reduction in this deck because of the Dragon Lord Servant and the Dragon Speaker Shaman. They feel very dragon tribal. And so I like the reduction a little bit more than the more powerful, just add 1 of any color to your mana pool. But let's have a few of those as well. Shaman of Forgotten Ways adds 2 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is going to help you a lot get those, red, 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 green, or the black, blacks. The mana costs are pretty oppressive in these dragons. He also has a Formidable ability. Formidable, pretty easy to get with dragons. For 11 mana, 9 green, green, tap. Each player's life total becomes the number of creatures he or she controls. Activate this ability only if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater. Formidabling him is just fun. You can usually Formidable and then swing with dragons and try and win the game. I think that he's very valuable in terms of mana ramp, and the Formidable is just a cool extra ability. Somberweld Sage has even more value when it comes to ramping out creatures. Same mana cost as the Shaman, but it's tap, add 3 mana of any 1 color to your mana pool for casting creature spells. So Somberweld Sage can definitely get out a dragon very quickly. Here we have a little bit more creature-based support with Krosan Tusker. Man, this cycling ability is great. 2 and a green, discard this card to draw a card, and when you do it, well, you also get a basic land of your choice. This is the green divination. It's uncounterable. I guess you can play it as a 6/5, but this is the card draw and the mana search you need. Meenenden Wildborn is 2 red-green for a 4/4. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. This is great mana ramp, very similar to the mana ramp on Oracle of Moldiah or Azusa, which are very powerful commander staples. This also has the ability of red-green, return a land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. Giving a dragon trample in this deck can be very important. They have a lot of power, but they don't always have trample. Meenenden is also my financial pickup of this deck. They're really cheap. Meenenden are well under $1, and this ability of playing an extra land is very powerful. It's consistent ramp in EDH decks. This card will definitely go up. Not quickly, but it'll definitely be a player in EDH. Mostly because, well, Oracle of Moldiah is so expensive. It's so expensive because it's so good. 4 mana for a 2/2. You can also play an additional land on each of your turns, but you play with the top card of your library revealed, and if it's a land card, you can play that. Oracle of Moldiah does ramp and card advantage in a creature. Really great card, but almost oppressively expensive. Solemn Simulacrum. Like I mentioned in a lot of other times, this deck is very colored mana intensive. And the ability to play a Solemn and get the lands you need while getting a little bit of card advantage is very important. Next we have Secure Tribe Elder, which is kind of a creature-based mana ramp. It's kind of like a spell in all honesty, but has the advantage of being a creature. Sacrifice Secure Tribe Elder, search your library for a basic land card, and put that onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. Last, we have a little bit more creature-based utility with Eternal Witness, 1 green, and, well, when it comes to play, you get something from your graveyard back to your hand. Great card, great inclusion. Now, I love playing dragons and turning them sideways, but you're going to need to find a way to move ahead in a game that's as powerful as Commander. So let's take a look at some of the card advantage strategies. Our card advantage engines start with Dragon Mage. 5 red for a 5/5 flyer. And whenever Dragon Mage deals combat damage to a player, you guys wheel of fortune. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws 7 cards. Dragon Mage can easily refill your hand. Well, and he's a dragon, which is pretty sweet. Sometimes your opponents will let Dragon Mage through because, well, they want to refill their hand too. Awesome political card draw. Next we have Nullspine Dragon, 5 red for a 7/5 flyer. And when Nullspine Dragon comes into play, you may discard your hand and draw cards equal to the damage dealt to target opponent this turn. So Nullspine Dragon can just generate you a ton of cards if you've swung with a couple dragons. Now, one thing to consider is that it's target opponent. So if you spread the damage out, you're going to have to pick one opponent to draw that number of cards. Another card advantage we have is Ziralon of the Claw. Not a dragon himself, but a 5 mana 3/4, and for 1 red, you can tap and search your library for a dragon card and put it into play as though it were just played. Shuffle your library afterwards. That creature is unaffected by summoning sickness. Remove that creature from the game at the end of turn. So you can tutor up any creature that you want. Well, not any creature, any dragon, and put him right into play, give him haste. This guy can be really fun, just constantly getting dragons out of your deck. The downside is that you do exile them afterwards, so you can't really get them back with things like Bladewing or with Fearsome Awakening. Our card advantage continues with some Planeswalkers. Domri Rod, 1 red for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you draw it. -2 is a little bit of removal. Target creature you control fights another target creature. And -7, well, you get an emblem that says your creatures fight really well and you win the game. +1 card advantage, -2 removal, -7 you win the game. Domri Rod earns his spot. Next we have Garruk, Caller of Beasts. 4 green for a beastly card draw engine. He starts with 4 loyalty, +1, reveal the top 5 cards of your library, and you get all the creature cards. This deck is full of creatures, so that +1 can draw you 3, 4, 5 creatures. Great. -3, you may put a green creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Sometimes this is exactly what you need. Other times you have a bunch of red and black creatures. Most dragons are red, but this -3 should not be ignored. And -7, well, whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a creature card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This is great. It's like 2 for 1 when it comes to creatures. Next, we have Birthing Pod, 3 and a Phyrexian green for an artifact. And for 1 and a Phyrexian green, you can tap, sacrifice a creature, and you search for one that's 1 converted mana cost bigger. This lets you move up the chain throughout your dragons. And in many cases, it lets you turn in your smaller utility creatures for those powerful dragons as you move up the line. Sometimes, well, you just want to sacrifice a dragon. Look at this Broodmate Dragon, 6 mana, and you get 2 4/4s. Well, you can sacrifice this and get a 7-drop and keep your dragon token on the battlefield. Powerful. You might notice I've been showing you a lot of creatures, a lot of dragons, a lot of creatures to help those dragons, a lot of ramp that's on creatures. There are just a few spells, and we try to keep them minimal so we can keep the creature count really high. Well, because some of these spells help them out. Dragonstorm, 9 mana for a sorcery that says search your library for a dragon permanent card and put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Storm. Dragonstorm is sweet. Now, it really doesn't belong in this deck. You have way too many high mana cost cards. There's almost no 1-drops. Dragonstorm is so cool, though. Maybe if you get rid of all those big rampy creatures and put in a lot of elves, some birds of paradise, maybe a mana artifact or two, you can make Dragonstorm work a little bit better. But man, it's so fun. It's worth mentioning, and it's worth maybe even building your deck around. Next, we have Primal Surge. This is one of the reasons why I have so many permanents in the deck. 10 mana total, 8 green for a sorcery that says exile the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you do, repeat the process. Man, Primal Surge is great. Sometimes you're just like, dragon, land, dragon. And this is where some of those haste abilities become really important. You Primal Surge and you need that Kolaghan, or you need the open mana to play your general or something to be able to give your creatures haste. But Primal Surge is a game ender. It's really sweet. Very fun, splashy card to play. Another one that's very similar to Primal Surge is Genesis Wave. X green. Reveal the top X cards of your library and put any number of permanent cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Okay. Genesis Wave, you want to cast this for at least X is 7, because that's where the sweet spot is for a lot of dragons. If you do it for 8, that's also really good. You can oftentimes just be an imitation of Primal Surge. Primal Surge is probably a little bit better and more fun, but Genesis Wave definitely gets those creatures out on the battlefield. A smaller, more manageable effect could be See the Unwritten. 4 green. Reveal the top 8 cards of your library and put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest into your graveyard. And then Ferocious, well, you're going to have Ferocious if you have at least 1 dragon. You get to get 2 of those creature cards. So See the Unwritten is oftentimes 6 mana, get the best 2 dragons in your top 8 cards. And last, we have Lurking Predators, 6 mana for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it into the battlefield. Otherwise, you may put that card in the bottom of your library. Lurking Predators is very fun. People will keep playing spells, and you'll keep getting creatures off of it. This is one reason why we have the creature count so high, is for all of these spells right here. You want to be able to hit with Domri, you want to be able to hit with Garruk, you want to be able to hit with Primal Surge and Genesis Wave and Lurking Predators, and that creates a very fun avalanche of dragons effect. Let's mention a few noteworthy lands. I'm only going to mention a few of them, not go through the whole mana base, because mana bases are boring. You should probably include as many dual lands that you have to help with those prohibitive mana costs of those dragons. The first is Haven of the Spirit Dragon. I mentioned it earlier when it came to Ugin. It can fix your mana when it comes to dragons, and you can get a dragon back from your graveyard. Crucible of the Spirit Dragon. It's a storage land for dragon mana. Very cool. Last, we have Cavern of Souls, which is just way too oppressively expensive, but I should mention it because it's a tribal deck. It makes it so that your dragons can't be countered when you cast dragon spells with it. Very cool cards, very noteworthy lands. All right, I want to talk to you about a few final thoughts and conclusions that I have about how to build this deck, how to play this deck, and kind of how not to play this deck. The first thing I want to say is that this deck is really fun, and it's designed to be fun. It's designed to be powerful, but not necessarily competitive. I think if you want a competitive dragon tribal deck, you should definitely check out Scion of the Dragon. It has 5 mana colors in it, so you can play any dragon ever printed. And this gives you access to some of the more oppressive dragons in the format. Things like instant speed, hitting someone with Nicobolus to make them discard their hand, or just being able to give your general hexproof to instant speed. This Jund dragon, the Tyrant of Jund, well, he's pretty cool, and I like him a lot. I like the interesting synergies that he has, but he's definitely not a powerhouse when it comes to, well, generals in EDH. But I think I like that. I like that he is just so dragony and not, tricky, competitive nature. I like playing with all of these fun dragons, and I like dragon storming even though my deck isn't built for it, or primal surging for half of my deck. I like distributing, dragons to the whole board and then stealing them with my general. I think all of these interactions are really fun, and they allow for really open and, cool gameplay among your playgroup. So when people ask me, well, how do I make this deck more competitive? I think I'd say I wouldn't. I mean, my general advice would be, well, cut some of the bad dragons. Replace some of the ramp, Ramp better, have more card draw, have more powerful dragons, and this could be a really powerful deck. But I think you lose some of the heart and soul of the dragons when you start replacing all of those pieces. I think there's definitely room in the list, a lot of room in the list, to tailor this to your play group. Think about instant speed removal, more board wipes, a little bit of leaning toward recursion. Stuff like that can make this maybe a little bit more competitive or a little bit less competitive, so that it matches what all the other decks you're playing, so that you can all have a really fun time. I want to thank you very much for watching Jumbo Commander's deck tech of Karrthus, Tyrant of Jund, Dragon Tribal. Please remember to subscribe, favorite, share, comment, argue, build. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.